What's up? I'm here with your week 8 review for all of week 8 last week. Let's just jump right into this. There's a bunch to get to. Starting with I think it was Thursday, Arkansas State Red Wolves against the Georgia State Panthers. Arkansas State won 51-35. It seems like it was close. Arkansas State pretty much was in control most of the game. Excuse me. The quarterback for Arkansas State had a great game passing and running. Justice Hansen, he was 17-28 for 257, 3 touchdowns, and ran for 76 yards and 2 more touchdowns. Their running back, one of their running backs anyway, Marcel Murray, ran for 115 yards and a touchdown. And they were pretty much, just in control. Hansen, he actually set a school record for touchdown passes in his career. He's got 70 so far, so congrats to him. Georgia State, they were they did put up 35, but it was mostly in the second half. A half after they were kind of down already. Their quarterback, Dan Ellington, had a good game though. 15-26, 250, 3 touchdowns as well, and added 52 yards rushing. But that was pretty much all Arkansas State. So then going to the next game on Thursday, it was a Stanford Cardinal against Arizona State Sun Devils, and this was it was a pretty close game. It was actually like only 6-3 at halftime. In the third quarter, Stanford scored 2 touchdowns to go at 20-6. Arizona State was able to add a touchdown in the fourth quarter, but Stanford held on to win 20-13. And a win Stanford kind of needed. KJ Costello, they kind of sort of went back to the running game a little bit. They hadn't been doing very well running. They only ran for 127 yards as a team, but it was still better than what they had been doing. Quarterback KJ Costello had a nice, an efficient game, 22-29, 231 yards, and a touchdown. Then the quarterback for Arizona State, Manny Wilkins, he was actually pretty good, 26-43, 353, added 41 yards rushing and a rushing touchdown. He threw an interception, didn't throw a touchdown, but he kept him in it most of the time. N'Keal Harry, wide receiver, one of the best in the country, 8 catches, 91 yards, as Stanford is able to hold on for that. Now going to the Friday games, the Colorado State Rams against the Boise State Broncos. This was all Boise State. The final score was 56-28, but it wasn't even that close. Boise State was up 35-7 at halftime. Brett Ripien, the quarterback for Boise State, had a great game. 22-26, 308 yards, 4 touchdown passes, no interceptions. Wide receiver A.J. Richardson had 6 catches, 137 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He had most of that in like the first quarter, basically. They ran for 150 yards as a team. Boise State just ran all over them. Colorado State, they did okay. They got 28, but like I said, it was late. Their quarterback, KJ Carter-Samuels, passed for 238, 2 touchdowns and 2 picks. The running back, Izzy Matthews, did go over 100 yards, 12 carries for 109 and a touchdown. And they had 2 guys go over 100 yards receiving. Preston Williams, one of the better receivers statistically in the country. He had 9 catches, 154 and a touchdown. And Warren Jackson had 9 catches for 105 yards and 2 touchdowns. But like I said, that was more in catch-up mode. Boise State had already had that game pretty much sealed. All right, the Air Force Falcons, UNLV Rebels. This was a fun game to watch. It went back and forth. Air Force ended up winning 41-35. In the first quarter, it was basically like UNLV would score, Air Force would score. And at one point, it was 21-20. Then Air Force they went up 41-21. And then UNLV made a late comeback, and Air Force was able to hold them off at the end. Air Force, they have a triple option team, but they do pass a little more than most triple option teams. But they only had 11 pass attempts, so their quarterback made it count. He was 9 for 11 for 217 yards, 1 touchdown, no pick. That's a big average. It's almost 20 yards per completion, 19.7 yards per completion. That's exactly what triple option teams like to do. They suck you up with a run, hope you get one-on-one coverage or somebody sneak downfield for a long game. That's pretty much what Air Force was able to do all game. But that quarterback, Isaiah Sanders, he did that running, but he also ran for 173 yards and 3 touchdowns. And they ran for 355 as a team. They actually, rarities of rarities, Ronald Cleveland, their wide receiver, actually had 100 yards receiving, which doesn't happen for a triple option team. He had 3 catches for exactly 100 yards and a touchdown. Now, in UNLV, like I said, they played pretty well. Quarterback Max Gilliam passed for 261, 3 touchdowns and a pick. Lexington Thomas, one of the best receivers in the Mountain West, if not the group of 5. He had 20 carries for 108 yards and 2 touchdowns. And actually, it was his 16th 100-yard game, which is second in school history. And he's only 586 yards shy of the school career rushing yard mark, which he could. There's 5 games left for UNLV. They're probably not going to make a bowl, so there's 5 games, but he should be able to hit that mark by the end of the year. So, and I'll keep track of that, see if he does at the end. All right, going into the Saturday games. The first one, Alabama Crimson Tide, Tennessee Volunteers. It's the same old story. Alabama was up 20-0 after 1 quarter. They won 58-21. Tua Tagovailoa was 19-29, 306 yards and 4 touchdowns. Get this. He has not thrown an interception yet this season. He's got 25 touchdown passes to 0 interceptions. That's amazing. They ran for 218 as a team. Jalen Waddle had 4 catches, 117, and a touchdown. The 4 touchdown passes for Tua Tagovailoa went to 4 different receivers, so he just spread it around. Tennessee, they weren't, their quarterback Keller Chris came in. He was okay, 9-15, 164, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Jawan Jennings had 6 catches, 102 yards. But they ran for 31 yards as a team. And it was just all Alabama there. Ohio State and Purdue, one of the biggest upsets of the season. Number 2, Ohio State went down in a big way to Purdue, 49-20. It was not even close. Let's start with Ohio State and move up now to Purdue. Dwayne Haskins even though they were down, he had a great game. Now, partially because they were down by so much, they had to pass. But he had 73 attempts. If I'm not mistaken, the record is like 78 or 80 or something like that. So he was 49 of 73 for 470 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. So he had a great game. KJ Hill, 9 catches, 105 yards. But really, it was all about Purdue and their offense. Offense, defense, everything. Their quarterback, David Blau. What's that name? Name again, David Blau. He was 25 of 43, 378, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Their running back, DJ Knox, ran for 128 yards and 3 touchdowns himself. Rondale Moore, their awesome wide receiver, he went off on them. 12 catches, 170 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And they had a pick 6 late in the game just for icing on the cake. This could reverberate in such a huge way. And Purdue, don't look now, they're 4-3 overall, but they are 3-1 in conference play. So they might have a leg up going down the stretch. So Purdue got a huge upset win there. NC State and Clemson. This pretty much what I said. I'm pretty sure I said it last week in one of these videos. Everybody was like, oh, it's going to be a good game. And I'm like, nah, Clemson's going to kill them. Clemson won 41-7, and it wasn't that close. NC State, they were just not. I hate to say they were overrated because they were undefeated, and 16 is about where they should be. Maybe a few spots higher, but they just were not playing as well, and Clemson was killing it. They did. Trevor Lawrence had he had his best game so far in his young career. He threw for 308 yards, a touchdown, no picks. T. Higgins had 8 catches, 119 yards, and a touchdown. Weirdly enough, Clemson only ran for 91 yards, and Travis Etienne, he only had 39 rushing yards, but he had 3 rushing touchdowns. They were all short. And Clemson just rolled with that. There's not even much to say about NC State. They didn't really do anything offensively. Clearly not defensively. They gave up 41 and about 400, almost 500 yards of offense. But Clemson rolled with that. All right, Mississippi State and LSU. This was a defensive game for sure, though. LSU, Nick Fitzgerald, The quarterback for Mississippi State, okay, yeah, he ran for 131 yards. He was 8 of 24 for 59 yards and threw 4 interceptions. They couldn't do anything. They lost 19-3. Now LSU offensively couldn't do a whole lot. They only got the 1 rushing touchdown because Mississippi State does actually have a good defense. But it was just kind of like, LSU didn't have to do a lot. Their defense was great. Their offense did just enough, partially because their defense set them up a little bit. And LSU was able to move to 4-1 in conference play and 7-1 overall and stay in that top 5 ranking. Michigan took on Michigan State Spartans. This was, both teams were good defense, and it's about what it played out to be. Michigan won 21-7. Defensively, Michigan State was held to 15 yards rushing and only 79 yards passing. They couldn't do anything. Offensive, Michigan State actually came in with the number 1 ranked rush defense in the country, and Michigan ran for 183 yards. Michigan State was only giving up like 63 yards rushing per game, and Michigan basically tripled it. Hell, Karan Higdon, the running back for Michigan, who I think is really good, that most people kind of don't really know a lot about, even though he plays for Michigan. He had 33 carries for 144 yards, so he himself doubled up what Michigan State normally gives up. Shea Patterson, quarterback for Michigan, he had a solid game, 14 of 25, 212, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, added 24 yards rushing. They had 4 sacks as a team, and Michigan was able to get that win out. Oklahoma Sooners and TCU. This was back and forth for a while. Oklahoma, they actually had gone up like 28-7, and then TCU came back, and it was only 28-24 at halftime. But then Oklahoma, with their Heisman candidate, I think, and Kyler Murray, he just poured it on. He was 19 of 24, 213 yards, 4 touchdown passes, no interceptions, added 51 yards rushing. They had 2 other guys go over 100 yards rushing. Kennedy Brooks, 168 yards and a touchdown. Trey Sermon, 110 yards and 2 touchdowns. And their defense did stop TCU in the second half. TCU put in their backup, Michael Collins. He was only 7 of 17, but for 142, 2 touchdowns and a pick, he brought them back in the game. Kevontae Turpin, I'll say this, he's a great all-around player. He'll play on Sundays for sure for TCU. He's their wide receiver / return guy. He had 5 catches, 62 yards, but his touchdown was a 41-yard pass, or touchdown reception, and he had a 99-yard kick return in the game to get them back into the game. And he nearly had a punt return for a touchdown. So he was really good, but Oklahoma just sailed. All right, UCF took on ECU. Now this was a weird game because the quarterback, the fringe Heisman candidate quarterback for UCF, Mackenzie Milton, he did not start the game and did not even play the game, and nobody knew why for the longest time. And he, even the commentators were touting him up, and as soon as the game started, the true freshman backup quarterback Darryl Mack came in, and they were like, what's going on? They even talked to the UCF radio broadcasting. They had no idea that Mackenzie Milton wasn't going to start. Later on, they said it was a game-time decision. Supposedly, Mackenzie had tweaked his ankle a little bit, but he was suited up. So it makes me think it wasn't that bad. He probably could have played if they needed him to, if the quarterbacks above him got hurt. But in this game, Darryl Mack, he showed as a true freshman early in the game. There were some passes he missed that I believe Milton would have hit easy. After the first quarter, they were actually down 3-0. But then finally, the offense got going. They scored 20 in the second quarter. They went in halftime up 20-3. Then they went up 20. Then ECU got a long touchdown pass, 20-10. And UCF got a field goal, went up 23-10. And then it all changed on this drive. UCF was able to pin ECU back at their 1-yard line. ECU goes on this long drive all the way down to UCF's 2-yard line. And it all changed. Everything changed. So that if ECU gets a touchdown there, it'd be a 6-point game. UCF as a freshman quarterback. At that point in the game, they hadn't been moving the ball on offense. It kind of sputtered. But then everything changed on one play. ECU tried the old Tim Tebow style jump pass, but it was a great play by the UCF defense overall. So the ECU quarterback, he went to jump pass, but he had to hold it because the receiver he thought was going to be open was covered. So the UCF guy recognized the play and covered the receiver who was supposed to be, which made the ECU quarterback hold it just for his extra second. And that extra second allowed a UCF blitzer to come in. He hit the arm, forced a fumble, and then UCF returned it 94 yards for a touchdown to go up 30-10. So that was a huge momentum swing in the game. Everything was going to ECU. They kept converting third downs. They went almost 99 yards to make it a 6-point game. And then like that, 94-yard fumble return for a touchdown gave UCF a 30-10 lead. Then they added a long touchdown run, a drive or two later. So UCF ended up winning 37-10. And what looks like a blowout, it was a bit closer. It kind of went from a blowout to being close to back to a blowout. So it was a lot closer than what it ended up being. But UCF, they've won 20 in a row now. And to their credit, beating a team by 27 points with a true freshman on the road, true freshman quarterback on the road, your Heisman candidate quarterback is out. And still, they put up 316 rushing yards. And UCF, now they won 20 in a row. Now they've scored 30 or more points in 20 straight. Darryl Mack, he was only 12 of 20 for 69 yards passing. So they didn't really rely on him a ton for passing. They did a trick play. The wide receiver had a 42-yard touchdown pass. But Mack did run for 120 yards himself in a touchdown. And UCF's defense, they played great, really, all game. They forced 5 turnovers, which is what they needed to, because early on UCF kind of sputtered, and they needed the turnovers to kind of keep them in it, and then they needed turnovers to make sure ECU didn't come back. The quarterback for East Carolina, he's a freshman quarterback, Holden Ahlers, but he was 29 of 53, 406 pass yards, 406, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, and added 69 rushing yards. They had 2 guys go over 100 yards receiving. ECU did. Trevon Brown, one of the best quarterbacks in the American. He had 10 catches, 145 and a touchdown. DeAndre Ferrier had 5 catches for 109 yards. And UCF was able basically to survive. And you know what? You survive. You win by 27 points with your true freshman backup quarterback. That's not a bad team. That's not a bad thing. Oregon Ducks took on Washington State. This is where game day was. I thought this would be closer. Washington State poured it on early. They were up 27-0 at halftime. Oregon actually then scored 20 straight points to make it 27-20. And then Washington State put another touchdown later in the game to seal it to win 34-20. Washington State, their quarterback Gardner Minshew, he went off like I said he's been doing all year. He was 39 of 51, 323, 4 touchdown passes, to 2 interceptions. They only ran for 77 yards as a team. Washington State did, which is that's what Mike Leach does. He doesn't run it. Quarterback Justin Herbert for Oregon. He passed for 270, a touchdown, no pick. He added a rushing touchdown. And what ended up being a pretty decent game in the end went to Washington State. Vanderbilt and Kentucky. Kentucky is somehow 6-1 and still ranked, and they shouldn't be. They barely won, 14-7. Dude, they ran. Their quarterback had 18 yards passing. That's shit, They ran for 280 as a team. Benny Snell Jr., the running back for Kentucky, ran for 169 and a touchdown. That's about all they have. He's a good running back. That's it. Their defense statistically is really good. I think that ends next week. I think Missouri destroys them, but I'll go over that in my previews. Vanderbilt, they only lost by 7. Their defense only held them to 14. It's just Vanderbilt's offense just can't really get going. But Kentucky survived that one. Colorado Buffaloes and Washington, which A game that was expected to be close pretty much was most of the game. The final score, Washington won 27-13, but they scored late to kind of add on. It was 17-13 going into the fourth quarter. Jake Browning for Washington, he was okay. 15-25, 150, touchdown and pick. It was actually below average for him anyway. They ran for 201 yards as a team. Their running back, Myles Gaskin, was hurt, so they kind of went running back by committee, and they all did just enough to win. Colorado, Steven Montez, he was, both quarterbacks pretty much played below what they normally do. Steven Montez, 17-28, 144 touchdown or picks. They were both 150 or below in touchdown pick, kind of average. But Washington ends up with a pretty hard fought. It was a good game between two pretty good defenses that Washington came away with. Penn State almost got upset by Indiana. Penn State won 33-28. This was pretty much back and forth all game. I'll start with Indiana. Peyton Ramsey, quarterback, was 26-36, 236, one touchdown, one pick. Their running back, C.B. Scott, who's actually turned into a really good running back for them. He had 138 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. Trace McSorley, he stopped his streak. He didn't throw for a touchdown, but he ran for 107 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game. And he did just enough to help them move up and down a little bit. They put up 33 points. But they have a tough game against Iowa next, which I'll break down my previews later. But Penn State ends up winning that. Maryland and Iowa. This is all Iowa. They won 23-0. It was a windy day. Maryland couldn't get their normally potent rushing game going. They were averaging like 215 rushing yards a game, and Iowa held them to 68 rushing yards. Maryland had only 47 passing yards. They only had, 120, 130 total yards. Iowa had a defensive touchdown. They ran for 224 yards. The Iowa quarterback, Nate Stanley, he didn't, partially because of the win, he was only 11 of 22 for 86 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. Like I said, it was pretty much the win. They relied on their running game, and Iowa was able to get, come out with that win there, and setting up a huge game against Penn State next week. Because Iowa, they're actually 6-1 overall and 3-1 in the conference, and they could very well take their side of the Big Ten division. Cincinnati and Temple. Cincinnati was one of those surprise teams. They were undefeated. They were ranked 20. But in a game I thought would be close, Temple ended up beating them in overtime, 24-17. The Temple quarterback, Anthony Russo, he's 20 of 41 for 237, which isn't great. He threw 3 interceptions, but he ended up with 3 touchdown passes, which is what allowed them to end up winning the game. Wide receiver Vento Bryant has now caught a pass in 43 straight games. For Cincinnati, Desmond Ridder, he was a freshman quarterback. He'd been playing really well, but his first, really kind of bad game of the year. He was 14 of 33, 111 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. He was only held to 9 yards rushing. Cincinnati, mostly what they had going for them was Michael Warren II, one of the top running backs statistically in the country, actually. He did run for 132 yards and a touchdown, but Temple's defense showed up, was able to hold Cincinnati's offense, who'd been doing pretty well. And Temple's scored just enough to win and get a pretty big upset victory. And actually Temple, they're 5-3 and 4-0 in conference, so they are right in there for the conference race as well. Alright, the UConn Huskies took on the USF Bulls. This game was just kind of weird for USF. They were down 7-0 to UConn. They scored right before halftime. It was only tied at 7 at halftime. Then UCF put up USF put up 17 points in the third quarter, then 14 more in the fourth. They had a pretty decent lead, then let UConn come all the way back. And then USF was able to hold on and win 38-30. It was pretty much a running game. South Florida quarterback Blake Barnett did not play very well. He was 20 of 28 for 265, 1 touchdown but 2 interceptions. And his touchdown, the first play of the second half, was a 75-yard touchdown pass, which is more so the wide receiver Randall St. Felix, who had 2 catches for 123 yards and that long touchdown. It was just a short, like 6-yard, 7-yard pass that St. Felix turned into a 75-yard touchdown. But really, the name of the game was South Florida's running game. They ran for 346 yards. It was where they had 2 guys go over 100 yards rushing. Jordan Cronkright, who's been on a tear. In fact, Cronkright just tied a school record with his 5th straight 100-yard game. He had 16 carries for 103 yards. But the real story was Johnny Ford. He only had 7 carries for 164 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's 23.4 yards per carry. He was just awesome all night. Their running game was awesome. Even Blake Barnett, he didn't do great passing, but he added 78 rushing yards and a touchdown. South Florida scored 20 or more points in 37 straight games. But UConn, to their credit, David Pindle, he's the quarterback I've been kind of touting. He's pretty much all UConn's had all year. He didn't do great passing, 10 of 21, 133, no touchdowns to pick, but he ran for 197 yards himself and 2 touchdowns. Their running back, Kevin Mensah, ran for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. So basically both running teams went off. But USF was able to hold on and remain undefeated. And they have a huge game against Houston next week, which I'll break down in my preview. That's a humongous game. Illinois taking on Wisconsin. This is, mostly Wisconsin. Wisconsin won 49-20. Their quarterback, Hornibrook, was 13 of 22, 188, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. The 2 picks are a little high, but he was able to get the the passing touchdowns. They had 2 guys go over 100 yards rushing, which is what Wisconsin does. Jonathan Taylor, the Heisman candidate, ran for 159, but then kind of out of nowhere, Taewon Deal ran for 111 yards and 2 touchdowns himself. They were to hold Illinois down a little bit, although Illinois did run for 210 yards as a team. Reggie Corbin had 9 carries for 100 yards and a touchdown himself, but Illinois couldn't really do a whole lot after that as Wisconsin rolled to a win. Buffalo Bills took on Toledo. This was a game I thought would be big in the MAC. Buffalo's off to a great start. They were 6-1. Toledo was only 3-3. They kind of underperformed, but I figured it'd be a close game. And it was for a while. Toledo was up 17-7, and then Buffalo just kind of roared back and went 31-17, moving the Bulls to 7-1. Tyree Jackson, 25 of 46, 326, 2 touchdowns. He threw 3 interceptions, which is not good, but it was enough for them to win. Anthony Johnson, he'd been kind of hurt a little this year. Now he's one of the best wide receivers in the country, talent-wise. I believe even still. He kind of came back. He had 4 catches, 83 yards, but he had 2 touchdowns. So he would do something there. Toledo just couldn't really do a lot. Their quarterbacks combined 7 of 21, which is unusual for them. They normally can move the ball, whether passing, running, whatever. But they just weren't able to hold up as Buffalo won. Tulsa took on Arkansas. Arkansas, this is probably their maybe their best game of the year. They won 23-0. They had a shutout. They put a freshman quarterback in. He was able to do something decent. He was only 10 of 16, 124, touchdown a pick, but didn't ask a whole lot from him. Rakeem Boyd from Last Chance U. He just under 100 yards rushing at 99. Arkansas's defense, like I said, they played well. They held Tulsa passing 8 for 25, and Arkansas came out with just kind of a feel-good win. They were 1-6 going in. They needed another win, so they got it. Auburn took on Ole Miss Rebels, and after a tumultuous week, Auburn had lost last week to an unranked Tennessee team when Auburn's ranked. They took on Ole Miss and pretty much ran away with it. They won 31-16, but it wasn't really that close. It was 31-9. Ole Miss scored a late touchdown. But Auburn was able to go with the Jarrett Stidham, 13 of 22, 215, a touchdown to pick. No picks, but it was really their running game. They ran for 269 yards as a team. Jatarvius Whitlow ran for 170 yards himself at running back for Auburn. And they were to hold Ole Miss offense down pretty well. Ole Miss got their yards, but they were only putting up 16. Jordan Ta'amu, the Ole Miss quarterback. He did throw for 324, touchdown, no picks, added 43 yards rushing. Their wide receiver, A.J. Brown, did go off on him. 10 catches, 155 yards, and a touchdown. But that's pretty much all. Auburn's defense actually showed up during the game. They had 5 sacks as well as a team. And Auburn got a much-needed victory for them. All right. Northwestern took on Rutgers in a bit of a dogfight. Rutgers has not been playing very well all year. Rutgers was actually up at halftime, 12-7. Northwestern finally got their offense going a little bit later. Northwestern scored a touchdown late and a 2-point, and they actually won 18-15. Kind of an unusual score, but whatever wins. Northwestern are 4-3 overall, but they are actually 4-1 in conference, and they have a big game against Wisconsin next week, possibly to take the lead in that division. Northwestern, pretty much it was their running game that kind of got them in. Isaiah Bowser had 24 carries, 108 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Obviously, their defense played well to hold Rutgers to 15 points. And Rutgers couldn't do a whole lot more than that. Pretty much they had a 44-yard touchdown run by Isaiah Pacheco, and that's pretty much all they could do. As Northwestern got a hard-fought victory, but that set them up really well for the future. All right, Army took on the Miami of Ohio Redhawks, and this was a close game. They went to overtime. Miami of Ohio had scored 30 or more points like 4 times this year. Their offense was decent. Hell, their quarterback, Gus Ragland, 30-53, 329 yards, 4 touchdown passes, no interceptions. They took Army to double overtime where they only lost 31-30, mainly because Miami was down 31-24 in overtime. They scored a touchdown, and then they went for the 2-point conversion to try to win it just right there, and they did not get it. Army, their quarterback was Cam Thomas. He was the backup actually in his first ever start at quarterback. Their normal starter, Hopkins, was injured, and they did what Army does. They ran for 347 yards as a team. They're a triple option team. That's pretty much, the quarterback was 0 for 2 passing, so... But that quarterback, he did run. He ran for 137 yards and a touchdown. In a pretty much up and back and forth game, both teams combined to be 10 of 13 on 4th down conversions. Most teams don't go a season, trying to convert 13 times, but these teams combined for that in this game. And what actually ended up being a really fun game to watch, a really, a nice shootout, double overtime game that Army was able to escape with there. All right, North Carolina Tar Heels pushed Syracuse. There's another overtime game, went to, I think, double overtime. Syracuse had a 20-7 lead at one point. North Carolina came back to lead 27-20. Then it was just back and forth from there. Went to overtime. In fact, the quarterback for Syracuse, Eric Dungy, he'd been kind of sputtering, and they put in Tommy DeVito in the 4th quarter. And all DeVito did was go 11 for 19, 181 yards, and 3 touchdowns, and then one interception. They had 2 guys go over 100 yards receiving. Syracuse did. Jamal Custis, 7 catches, 162, 1 touchdown. Nykeem Johnson, 5 catches, 1 and 2, 1 touchdown. They need all that. Syracuse won in double overtime, 40-37. Nathan Elliott, the quarterback for North Carolina, he was 34-52 for 321, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Antonio Williams at running back ran for 116 yards and a touchdown. They had a punt return touchdown in this game as well. Daz Newsome did. North Carolina had 5 sacks defensively. North Carolina, they started off kind of inept, but the past bunch of games they've shown something on offense. They're only 1-5. I doubt they'll be able to come back to get a bowl. So that'd be a really good story if they did. But it seems like to be setting themselves up for next year. It seems like they're kind of too late now. But one, they could play spoiler for the rest of this year for whoever they end up playing, and then build up for next season. But Syracuse was able to come out with that win in the end. All right, Virginia and Duke. Duke was 5-1. Virginia coming off a win over Miami, and Duke was a pretty good team. And Virginia was able to win. They won 28-14. Their offense Their defense played really, really well. Their offense played well enough. Bryce Perkins, the quarterback, threw for 189 and a touchdown and added 61 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Olumide Zaccheaus, he only had 66 yards receiving but 10 catches, so he was able to kind of, keep that there. Duke, they couldn't do a ton on offense. Daniel Jones, he had 1 touchdown pass but 2 interceptions. And don't look now, but Virginia's 3-1 in conference play with a very their next 3 games are games they should win, and it could be at one point 8-2 later, going later into the season. Idaho State Bengals, 1AA taking on Liberty Flames. Liberty is a transition team. They have a really good offense, and they showed it here. Liberty won 48-41. Pretty much this is a game, I've been kind of touting Liberty all year about their offense, and this is a game, if you watched it, you would see what they have potentially on their offense. Stephen Calvert, their quarterback, he threw for 300, he was 32 of 48, 362 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did throw 2 interceptions, but Antonio Gandy Golden, one of their best receivers there in school history, he had 10 catches for 142 yards and 2 touchdowns. DJ Stubbs had 8 catches for 108 yards. The running back Frankie Hickson added 133 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Liberty, there's actually a back and forth game because Idaho State, they actually put up some points. They put up 41. Their quarterback Tanner Guler was threw for 397, 4 touchdown passes, 2 picks. They had a running back Ty Flanagan, 12 carries, 136 yards and a touchdown. They had 2 guys go over 100 yards receiving themselves. In fact, Michael Dean, 6 catches, 210 yards and a touchdown. And then Mitch Guler, 9 catches, 125 yards and 2 touchdowns. But Liberty was able to survive. Liberty is actually 4-3, and they're only 2 games away from 6. And normally a team in a transition year, they are not bowl eligible if they get to 6 wins. However, there's a stipulation that if there are not enough bowl eligible teams, then if there's a team that's in that transition year that has enough wins to qualify, then they can be taken. So they do actually have something to play for, other than themselves and to win, but they could potentially make a bowl depending on how the rest of the country does in terms of bowl eligibility. And I'll keep track of that as the season goes on. So, Liberty potentially could even make a bowl their first year, which would be pretty damn cool. All right, Bowling Green Falcons took on Ohio, and this ended up being about what I thought. Bowling Green has a good passing game. They kept it close for a little bit, but actually earlier in the week, Bowling Green's head coach Mike Jinks was fired, and so they had an interim head coach. And basically ended up being all Ohio, as Ohio won 49-14. Quarterback for Ohio, Nathan Rourke, he only was 8 for 12, but those 8 completions went for 193 yards and 4 touchdown passes on. And he added 101 yards rushing and a touchdown. Malik Irons added 116 yards and a touchdown. It was just all Ohio. Bowling Green, Jarrett Dagey, he was okay, 19 of 24, 214, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Scott Miller, they're just guy who just gets 100 yards every game, 6 catches, 145 and a touchdown. But Ohio went, it was just all Ohio. All right, Utah State taking on Wyoming. This was interesting because Utah State, they started off well. They were 5-1. They had one of the top 3 scoring offense in the country. But Wyoming's defense held them down. Utah State did win 20, but only 24-16. They were averaging over 50 points a game. And actually, Utah State did it. They couldn't do a whole lot rushing. They only passed for 53 yards as a team, which is unusual. Their running back Darwin Thompson, he ran for 109 yards and 2 touchdowns, and that was pretty much it. Their defense, they had a special teams touchdown. They returned a kick for a touchdown. Their defense was able to even set up one of the short scores. Wyoming, to their credit, offensively they couldn't do a whole lot. Defensively they did a lot, but they did have they put in Sean Chambers, a quarterback who hadn't played I think he was a freshman. And passing yards, he didn't do a ton, but he did run for 100 yards. Nico Evans, statistically one of the top 10 running backs in the country. He ran for 133 yards and a touchdown. But Wyoming was able to do a lot, and Utah State, they moved to 6-1. They're 3-0 in conference, and they escaped to a win, but that's all they needed, and they won. All right, Florida Atlantic, kind of a disappointing season so far. They got killed by Marshall. They lost 31-7. Their running back Devin Singletary for FAU, he was held to 39 yards rushing and did not have a touchdown, which broke his streak. In fact, Marshall, they did not allow a first quarter touchdown game, and Marshall has not allowed a first quarter touchdown in 10 consecutive games, which is the second longest streak in the nation. Offensively, Alex Thompson was okay, 13-24, 102, 2 touchdowns, but he didn't throw an interception. Tyler King at running back, who's been on, he's been on a tear lately. He ran for 125 and a touchdown, and Marshall pretty much did it running the ball in this game. And defensively, the quarterback for Florida Atlantic, Chris Robeson, he threw 4 interceptions, which isn't good. Pretty much the only good thing for Florida Atlantic, Javon Durante, 7 catches, 114. But Marshall just pretty much slaughtered them in that and moved to 3-1 in conference themselves. And Marshall's one away from bowl eligibility. And I'll break all that down. I'm going to do a stat attack later. So, all right, Charlotte took on Middle Tennessee State. It ended up being a pretty close game. Middle Tennessee ended up winning 21-13. Their quarterback Brent Stockstill, he didn't put up a whole lot of numbers passing. He was 14-20 for 111, but he had 3 touchdown passes. He did throw a pick, but the 3 touchdown passes was more than enough. Their defense was able to hold down Charlotte, at least score-wise. Ben LeMay, running back for Charlotte, he ran for 129 and a touchdown. But it was all Middle Tennessee, as Ty Lee, their wide receiver Ty Lee, he had 6 catches for 60 yards and 2 touchdowns, and now he's actually caught a pass in 33 straight games himself, so there's another nice streak going. It's Middle Tennessee, they're 4-3 overall, 3-1 in conference play, so they're right in there for the CUSA conference. Eastern Michigan, they're finally finding ways to win. They beat Ball State 42-20. They moved to 4-4 overall. Eastern Michigan could make a bowl this year. Tyler Weiger is at quarterback, 22-28, 257, 3 touchdowns, no picks. They ran for 163 as a team. They were able to move it up and down the field offensively and hold down Ball State quarterback Riley Neal, who'd been having a pretty good season. He was 21-39, 157, 1 touchdown, and 1 pick. In Eastern Michigan, they're finally figuring out how to win. They figured out how to win a close game last week, and now they're just learning how to win and figuring out how to win. Western Michigan, it was all Western Michigan over Central Michigan, as Western Michigan did become bowl eligible. They moved to 6-2 overall. They didn't do a whole lot passing, but they ran for 305 yards as a team. Levante Bellamy at running back ran for 145 and a touchdown. Jamartin Bogan ran for 96 and a touchdown. The quarterback, John Watson, he was only 5 for 9, 51 yards passing, and only ran for 28 yards rushing, but he had 3 rushing touchdowns, which is all they needed. As Central Michigan just couldn't still not get anything going on offense. They were held for 9 of 24 passing. And Western Michigan ran away with it. They're 4-0 in conference. They are very much a contender to win the MAC championship later in the year. All right, Coastal Carolina went up to UMass and took on UMass in a game I thought UMass would actually win. But Coastal Carolina, to their credit, they played 3 different quarterbacks and they all helped. Fred Payton, their 3rd string, he came in. He was 5 for 7, 107, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Bryce Carpenter, who'd been the backup, he's a true freshman. He didn't have anything passing, but he added 53 rushing yards. They ran for 279 yards as a team. Malcolm Williams at wide receiver, 4 catches, 153 yards and a touchdown. And Coastal Carolina, they actually won 24-13. UMass, Andrew Ford had a nice game statistically, 20-34, 326 and a touchdown. Andy Isabella, one of the top receiver in the country in terms of catches, and he's actually oddly enough, tied for the number one in receiving yards. He had 10 catches, 174 yards. Sadiq Palmer had 7 catches, 139 yards, and a touchdown. But Coastal Carolina was able to hold on and win. And Coastal Carolina is only 2 away from a bowl game. And this is their second year in FBS, so they are eligible to go to a bowl if they get to that 6 wins, which they very well could. All right, Houston took on Navy, and this ended up being a shootout of shootouts. Navy was actually up at one point, I think 24-7 or 24-14. Then Houston came roaring back. The Cougars came roaring back behind who I think should be Heisman candidate, quarterback De'Aaron King. And Houston won 49-36. De'Aaron King was 25-38, 413 passing yards, 3 touchdown passes, no interceptions, and added 56 yards rushing and a touchdown. He was just all over. They ran for 157 as a team. They had 3 guys go over 100 yards receiving. Marquez Stevenson, 8 catches, 141. Courtney Lark, 5 catches, 106, and a touchdown. And Keith Corbin, 6 catches, 104, and a touchdown. And they have a huge game against USF next week. But Navy, to be honest, they're more of a triple option team, but they had their one of their quarterbacks came in, Garrett Lewis. He was 9 of 13, 135, a touchdown pick. They ran for 349 yards as a team. They actually had a guy go over 100 yards receiving. Taylor Jackson had 5 catches, 120, and a touchdown, which is rare for a triple option team. But they needed it because, they were up and then they were down by a lot, and then it was kind of back and forth. It was a really fun game to watch. But Houston, man, they got a huge game coming up. Houston now has scored 40 plus in 7 straight games. One of their defenders, Austin Robinson, he had 21 tackles in the game, 21 and 2 sacks to go along with it. I even shout out the Navy kicker, Bennett Mooring. He's now Navy's career leader in points by kicker with 195 points, and he's got a school record with 129 extra points. So even the kicker got in on the fun in a really high scoring game. Houston is now bowl eligible at 6-1. They're 3-0 in conference, and like I said, huge game against USF next week, and I'll break that down in my previews. SMU took on Tulane, and there was a rain delay in this one, and this was kind of back and forth. SMU ended up getting a late score to go up and win, and SMU won 27-23, which moves them to 3-4, but that means they're only three away from bowl eligibility, so maybe they can get it. Ben Hicks, 21 of 40, 291, 3 touchdowns and a pick at quarterback for SMU. They got 5 sacks to the defense. Tulane, they usually run more, but this game they kind of need to pass it a bit more. Jonathan Banks, 153, no touchdown, a pick, but he added 34 rushing yards and a touchdown. And SMU was able to, it was a pretty good, pretty good game back and forth that SMU was able to win. All right, Akron and Kent State in a game that I thought would be even and ended up being even. Akron won in overtime, 24-23. Kent State, they actually scored a touchdown, and instead of the extra point to tie it, they went for 2 and did not get it. So they lost to Akron. Quarterback Cato Nelson, he passed for 219, a touchdown pick. He added 90 yards rushing actually in a touchdown, but one of them was a 55-yard touchdown. Woody Barrett, Kent State, their quarterback, he's pretty much most of what they've had, and why I thought Kent State might win, because he's a good dual threat guy. He's a transfer from Auburn. Imagine if Auburn would be better with this guy. They lost something with him. Jarrett Stidham kind of sucks. Woody Barrett, though, 16 of 30, 188, touchdown. Noonan Simpsons added 81 yards rushing and a touchdown in a close game, but Akron won and moved to 3-3, and maybe they can sneak their way into a bowl game if they can win just 3 more games. All right, Louisiana Raging Cajuns took on Appalachian State Mountaineers, and this was a close game. Appalachian State had been, beating people up all over the place, but and Louisiana is in the opposite division in the Sun Belt and usually a pretty decent team. But Appalachian State was able to come out with the win, but they only won 27-17, which, like I said, Appalachian State been blowing everybody out, and this was close. But it moved Appalachian State to 5-1, 3-0 in conference. In fact, Appalachian State is now ranked in the top 25. They are at number 25, but they are ranked. They did it running. They ran for 266 as a team. Darrington Evans ran for 183 and a touchdown. Both defense actually played pretty well, considering, like I said, Appalachian State, they one of the top offenses and defenses in the country, had been averaging like almost 50 points a game or something around there. And Louisiana held them down. Trey Ragas for Louisiana, 81 rushing yards and a touchdown. But Appalachian State was able to escape with a victory there, which is good because they hadn't really been challenged all year, and they finally were, and they showed that they can win the close games, which will help them later. In fact, next week they're playing Georgia Southern, who's also 6-1, 5-1, something like that. They're one of the best teams in the Sun Belt as well. And I'll break that down. All right, UTEP took on Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech, one of the top teams in the CUSA. UTEP came in with an 18-game losing streak. Still, for the second game in a row, UTEP kept it close, but Louisiana Tech was able to escape with a 31-24 win. Jamar Smith at quarterback for Louisiana Tech. Normally he passes it for a lot, but really they couldn't pass it for a ton. And actually UTEP's defense played pretty well, even though they gave up 31. Jamar Smith, he only passed for 156 yards and a touchdown. And actually, basically the first, early in the first quarter, Louisiana Tech was able to get a interception for a touchdown, which ended up being the difference in the game. Again, UTEP, the one turnover they make, basically cost them the game. Their wide receiver, Teddy Veal for Louisiana Tech, did have 11 catches for 103 yards. Ryan Metz for UTEP, he did pass for 164, touchdown and pick. Obviously they helped keep them in the game, but it just wasn't enough. UTEP is still searching for their first win of the year, but Louisiana Tech, they went to 5-2 overall in 3-1 conference and very much alive for the CUSA. Alright, Florida State took on Wake Forest. Florida State was actually down at one point 10-0, and then Florida State came back. Francois passed for 353, 2 touchdowns. Cam Akers ran for 98 yards and 2 touchdowns. Nyquan Murray had 8 catches, 131 and a touchdown. And their defense was able to hold down Wake Forest and they won big, 38-17. I would like, no, I'm a Gator fan, but I can recognize, when a human being is in need. And defensive end for FSU, Janarius Robinson, he had a house, his mom had a house up in the Panhandle of Florida. They got destroyed by Hurricane Michael. And he actually got a wait because players are not allowed to receive money as part of NCAA rules. If they do, they could be suspended, lose their scholarship, whatever. But for these extenuated circumstances, Janarius Robinson was able to apply for a waiver to start a GoFundMe to help, get some money in and try to build a house, do something. And he had a goal of $75,000 and has actually received $102,000. So that's pretty awesome. Congrats to him. Good luck to him and his mom as they can, hopefully use this and move on and maybe have a better life, better house, better everything. So, good on them for Florida State. Alright, going into next game, Minnesota Golden Gophers taking on the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And Nebraska started 0-6. They were like this close in so many games, and finally Nebraska broke through in a big way. They won 53-28. Quarterback Adrian Martinez, freshman, 25-29. 276, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Stanley Morgan Jr., 10 catches, 163 yards, 2 touchdowns. They ran for 383 yards as a team. They had 3 guys go over 100 yards rushing. Divine Ozigbo, 12 carries, 152, 2 touchdowns. The quarterback, Adrian Martinez, added 125 rushing yards and a touchdown, and Maurice Washington added 109 yards and a touchdown as Nebraska finally got their first win under Scott Frost. Minnesota, everything they did was too little too late. Pretty much, they passed for 349 as a team. They had 2 quarterbacks go in. But pretty much all they had was wide receiver Tyler Johnson. He did have a huge game, 11 catches, 184 receiving yards. But it was all about Nebraska as they finally got their win this year. Kansas took on Texas Tech in a game I thought could be close if Kansas could force some turnovers, which they're number 1 in the nation forcing turnovers this year. But they could not do so. And Texas Tech rolled to a 48-16 win. And actually, their freshman quarterback, Alan Bowman, he missed the last couple games. He had a partially collapsed lung. But all he did was come back and go 36 for 46 for 408 yards, 3 touchdowns, a pick. Antoine Wesley, one of the top receivers in the nation, 9 catches, 155, and a touchdown. Kansas, they couldn't do a whole lot. It's their 43rd consecutive true Big 12 road loss. They have not won a game on the road in the Big 12 since 2008. In fact, since October 4th, 2008. So it's been over 10 years. 10 years, not games. But it's just crazy. 10 years. You'd think you'd fall into victory. I'll shout out Joe Deneen Jr., linebacker for Kansas. He ended up with 2 tackles for loss in the game, and that actually ties the school record for tackles for loss in a career at 41. So if he gets one more, if he gets a half of one, he'll break the school record. But Texas Tech, they're 1 win away from bowl eligibility and 3-1 in conference, so they're right up there for the conference as well. All right, Missouri Tigers took on the Memphis Tigers, and it was all Missouri. Missouri won 65-33. It was 48 to I think 20 at halftime. Memphis, they have the nation's leading rusher, Darrell Henderson, but he'd been hurt. He played a little bit, 4 carries for just 15 yards, but then he did not play the rest of the game. Drew Lock at quarterback. He threw for 350, 4 touchdowns. Larry Roundtree ran for 118 yards and 3 touchdowns. They ran for 273 as a team. They had 2 guys go over 100 yards receiving. Albert Okubunam, that's their tight end. It's hard to pronounce. I gotta work on that. It's like Okubunam, yeah. So he had 6 catches, 159, 3 touchdown receptions. Jalen Knox had 5 catches, 104, and a touchdown. Memphis was able to move it. Brady White at quarterback, 208, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. They did have a running back, Patrick Taylor, go for 100 yards rushing, 115 and 2 touchdowns. DeMonte Coxey, 8 catches, 111 and a touchdown, but it was all too little too late, and Missouri destroyed them. All right, Cal took on Oregon State. I thought Oregon State was going to win. I was way off. California just killed them, 49-7. Chase Garber is the quarterback for California. 17-26, 234, 3 touchdown passes. Patrick Laird, their running back, really, really good running back. Most people don't know about. He ran for 193. He had 2 touchdown runs himself. They ran for 305 yards as a team. Cal did. They held Oregon State down to only 7 points. They couldn't even get Jamar Jefferson, their top running back. He was kind of injured, so he couldn't get going. They couldn't get going as a team. They had 7 sacks. Defensively, Cal did, and they're only 2 games from bowl eligibility, so maybe they can sneak in. All right, Georgia Southern took on New Mexico State, and Georgia Southern, they pretty much rolled. The final score was 48-31, so it was pretty high scoring, but Georgia Southern was in control most of the game. They had a big lead and then gave up a bunch late, or not even late, just kind of throughout, but they had a basically insurmountable lead for most of the game. Georgia Southern, they ran some more, 389 yards rushing. They're more of a triple option team. They have a huge game against Appalachian State coming up, which will be fun to watch. But Georgia Southern was able to get to 6-1. They are bowl eligible. Logan Wright, running back, ran for 136 yards and 2 touchdowns. The quarterback Shea Werts, he was only had four pass attempts, but he was 4 for 4, 77 yards, added 70 yards rushing and a touchdown. Georgia Southern they got a takeaway. They've had a takeaway in 10 straight games. They're one of the nation's leaders in turnovers, forcing turnovers, turnover margin, everything. New Mexico State, statistically, like, they put up a bunch of yards. They put up about 450 yards almost of offense. They put up 31 points. Their quarterback passed for 295. Their running back, Jason Huntley, he had 3 touchdown runs, but their defense wasn't doing enough to win. Our UTSA took on Southern Miss. Southern Miss, it was sort of just Southern Miss won 27-17. They have one of the top passers in the country, Jake Abraham. He went 28 of 33, 269, a touchdown, a pick. Tim Jones, 7 catches, 107 yards. Travinsky Mosley actually added 142 yards rushing. The quarterback Abraham added a touchdown run and 28 more yards. Southern Miss, they're 3-3, and I think they probably should be able to win at least 3 more games, maybe sneak into the bowl. They have the offense, at least passing-wise, to be able to do so. I'd have to look at who they play. UTSA, to their credit, they kept them in. They normally, their defense is playing actually pretty decently this year to keep them in, but their offense just can't do enough. So Southern Miss ends up with the win. Texas State taking on Louisiana Monroe. This was a close game too. Louisiana Monroe only won 20-14. Texas State, as I've said all year, they don't have much going for them offensively. Their defense is actually pretty decent. But Louisiana Monroe was able to just come in. Caleb Evans at quarterback, he was only 13-29 for 124 yards, but he had a touchdown pass, no turnovers, and added 85 yards rushing as they ran for 229 as a team. They're actually 4-4 overall, 2-2 in conference, but they're actually number on top of their side of the Sun Belt Conference now. So maybe they can get 2 more wins down the road. Maybe they can. They're in a position to possibly play in the Sun Belt, the inaugural Sun Belt Championship game. So, who knows if, what Louisiana Monroe can do. Fresno State took on New Mexico, and it was all Fresno. Statistically, they're one of the best teams in the country in offense and defense. They're basically like top 20, top 30 in both, like an overall, like rush defense, rush offense, pass, whatever. And they showed it today. They won 38-7. Marcus McMarion, he's efficient as hell. Like, he was 20 of 30 for 280 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Keyshawn Johnson, not related, 8 catches, 149 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's one of the best wide receivers in the Mountain West. They don't really have a running back. They ran for 153, but it is a team, which is pretty much all they needed. Fresno's on a pretty decent roll right now. They've gone 5 straight games with an interception. In fact, Mike Bell, he's had 3 straight games with an interception himself. So maybe they keep it going next week. In New Mexico, their offense had been doing well, but Fresno State held them to only 7 points. They couldn't really move it a whole lot. And Fresno, they're 6-1. They're 3-0 in conference. They're very, very much alive for the Mountain West Conference Championship. All right, Rice took on Florida International, and Rice is up a little bit early. Then Florida went into halftime up 16-10 and pretty much cruised. As Florida International won 36-17. They're 3-0 in conference. They're 5-2 overall. They're only 1 win away from bowl eligibility. James Morgan at quarterback, he's had a really, really good year. He's a transfer in from Bowling Green. He had started a couple years ago and was decent with them. He's 20 of 29 for 229, 2 touchdowns, no picks. He added a rushing touchdown. They ran for 217 as a team. Their defense had 3 interceptions on the day and held Rice down, and they had a really nice victory there. All right, and one of the games of the day I was actually looking forward to, one of the better games in the CUSA. North Texas took on UAB. North Texas was 6-1. UAB was 5-1. And this pretty much ended up being what I thought. North Texas actually took a big lead. They're up 21-10 at one point. But UAB came all the way back and scored 19 straight. And UAB actually won 29-21 and moved them to 6-1. They're 4-0 in conference play. They're pretty much one of the favorites to win this USA, maybe. AJ Early, he doesn't do a whole lot, running at quarterback. He was 14 of 22, 189, added 23 rushing yards. He didn't have any touchdowns, but he put them in the position to score, along with, and their defense actually went at top 10 to 15 in the nation. Spencer Brown at running back, 25 carries, 100 yards exactly, 3 touchdown runs. North Texas, though, they're a passing team, and that's how they were able to get the lead at first, but they couldn't do much more. Mason Fine had a great game, 29 of 40, 336, 3 touchdown passes, no picks. They had 2 guys go over 100 yards receiving. Jalen Darden, 10 catches, 143, 2 touchdowns. Rico Bussey Jr., 6 catches, 1 of 4 and a touchdown. But it was all UAB in this game, and it ended up being it was only an 8-point game, and they came back to do that. And UAB, they've had an awesome last couple of years. If anybody doesn't know their story, back in 2014, they went 6-6. They shut down the school, not the school, but the football program. So in the 15 to 16 seasons, they did not even play football. Then they brought them back last year. In their first year back, they actually won 8 games, made a bowl game, and now they're bowl eligible again and could very well win a CUSA championship. So that'd be a phenomenal story if they do that. All right, Old Dominion took on Western Kentucky. This was a friggin' crazy game, right? Western Kentucky was up by a lot with 5:40 left, less than 5:40 left in a game. Old Dominion scored 18 points to win, 37-34. Let's see, I'm trying to think exactly what happened here. Western Kentucky was up 27-20. Old Dominion, they score, they tie. I'm trying to think. It was basically because I was reading about, it kept going in and out. I was able to watch some of it, but basically, right. So Western Kentucky was up 27-19. Then with 5:40 left in the game, Old Dominion ties, gets the touchdown, gets the 2, ties it at 27. Then with 1:37 left in the game, Western Kentucky gets a touchdown to go up 34-27. Then this is where it got crazy. 9 seconds left in the game, Old Dominion gets a touchdown. They tie it 34-all. They kick off. Western Kentucky, Old Dominion gets called for a roughing the passer at one point, which puts Western Kentucky in field goal range with 2 seconds left. They try a 57-yard field goal. It misses, but Old Dominion gets called for a penalty, which puts them five yards further up. Western Kentucky then tries a 52-yard field goal, and this is where it gets nuts. They try for the field goal. It falls short, so the Old Dominion guy, they put a guy in the end zone to catch the ball. He catches it. He returns it 83 yards down to the Western Kentucky 17. On the return, Old Dominion gets called for a face mask penalty on the guy that returned it, which puts it half the distance to the goal, which also gave Old Dominion 1 untimed down because, like I said, there were 2 seconds left. The return had run out the clock. If you didn't return it for a touchdown, they would have just gone to overtime. But because of the face mask, it gave Old Dominion 1 untimed down from the 9-yard line, and Old Dominion got a field goal to win 37-34. One of the craziest endings to a game that you could have. Both teams just put up points and yards like nuts. like crazy. Western Kentucky, Davis Shanley, 24-31, 257, 2 touchdowns. They ran for 207 a team. Old Dominion, Blake LaRussa, 21-32, 327 passing yards, a touchdown. Keyshawn Strong ran for 125 and 2 touchdowns. Travis Fulgham, 7 catches, 102 and a touchdown. And Old Dominion got only their second win of the year. Their other one being against Virginia Tech in that weird upset. But Old Dominion got to number 2, and they won in a weird fashion. USC faced Utah. USC was up 14-0, and then Utah was like, and they blew them out. Utah won 41-28. They're 5-2 overall. Tyler Huntley, quarterback, 22-29, 341, 4 touchdown passes, no interceptions. It is his third straight game completing over 70%. Zach Moss ran for 136 yards, the running back for Utah, one of the top running backs in the country this period, really. And they held USC down. USC was only 12-23 passing, 132 yards, 73 rushing. Michael Pittman Jr. is all they had, 4 catches, 107, a touchdown. One of their touchdowns was a defensive touchdown. They did have 5 sacks in the game, but it was all Utah, and Utah is very, very much has a shot here for the Pac-12 championship. All right, going to Arizona and UCLA. I picked UCLA to win, and it was a really close back-and-forth game. UCLA only won by a point, 31-30. Quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson, freshman, he started off well, 5 for 8, 103, a touchdown, no picks. But then he got hurt. And then Michigan transfer Wellington Spate came in, and he actually played well, 17-27, 204, 2 touchdowns, no picks himself. Running back Joshua Kelly, 4th straight 100-yard rushing game, ran for 136 and a touchdown. Arizona, I mean, they only lost by a point. Khalil Tate was hurt, so they put Rhett Rodriguez in. He did okay, 231, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. But they had 2 guys go over 100 yards rushing. J.J. Taylor, 19 carries, 154 and a touchdown. Gary Barrow ran for 121. Wide receiver Sean Poindexter had 6 catches, 106 and 2 touchdowns. And one of the pivotal moments in the game, I was watching it, and J.J. Taylor, the running back for Arizona, he had a long touchdown, or long run going. It was like a 50 or 60 yard run. And it seemed clear that he was going to get a touchdown, but the defensive player for UCLA trailing him made a phenomenal play. You could actually see his eyes like watching where the ball was, because J.J. Taylor had it on the inside hand, and you could tell the guy was like sizing up when to punch it out right at the right moment. He punches it out, makes J.J. Taylor fumble through into the end zone, and the UCLA guy gets it in the end zone for a touchback. So it went from a touchdown there, which it was a 1-point game that probably could have won most likely would have won the game, even though it was early in the game, but still, So it went from a potential touchdown to a turnover and allowed UCLA to get their second win of the season. All right, San Jose State took on San Diego State. San Jose State was 0-6. San Diego State was 5-1, 3-0 in conference. But San Diego State, it's weird. Like, they win, but they're never flashy. They win with their defense, with opportunistic special teams, and running game. And they only came out with a 16-13 win, but that's all they needed. The kicker, I'll shout him out. John Barron II. He had one of the field goals was over 50 yards. In fact, the game winner was like 51 yards. And he actually is tied for the national lead with 4 50-plus yard field goals on this season. They ran for 207 yards as a team. San Diego State did. That's pretty much, what they needed. San Jose State, they had their quarterback was okay. Josh Love, 26-36, 215, 0 touchdown and pick. Their defense played really well to hold San Diego State to 16, but San Diego State ends up with the win there. And in the nightcap, Nevada took on Hawaii, and Nevada just destroyed Hawaii. They won 40-22. I've been hyping up the quarterback for Hawaii, Cole McDonald. He played okay, 259, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Wide receiver John Russell, he's tied for the national lead in receiving yards. He had 7 catches, 123 and a touchdown. But Hawaii just could not stop Nevada's offense. Quarterback Ty Ganji, 21-29, 247, a touchdown, a pick. Toa, running back for Nevada, ran for 126 and a touchdown. They ran for 220 as a team. They put up 40 points. In Nevada, they're 4-4 overall and could maybe sneak into a bowl. Hawaii, they're 6-3 overall. They only need one more one-day bowl eligibility. They should get at least the one by the end of the year. But that was that. So that's my Saturday review. I'm about to do my stat attack. I'll do the Saturday previews. Peace.